All right, we're continuing on with Sri Ramakrishna, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is just the story of his life. And we're on, we're six paragraphs toward the end of chapter 24. All right, so I'm not sure what page that is because I'm on a PDF here without page numbers. And we're starting with the paragraph where the master is beginning to speak.
It's 471, Swami, I think. Page 471.
Okay. Is the first sentence a devotee who can call on God?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
That's where you're at.
Excellent. So Sri Ramakrishna is talking, and they've been having a conversation about the various paths, various ways of reaching God, and talking about how discernment, dispassion, and renunciation are really the gems of the joy in religion. They're the ways, they are your mining tools, your tools for diving deep within yourself to find the truth, to get through that big layer of story that we have in the mind that's constantly trying to define the moment for us and trying to constantly define the condition and circumstance of our being. And so the tools for kind of mining through the layer of ego that is necessary in order to hear the voice of the divine within, to hear the inner guru, which is why at the beginning we take an external guru, is because that layer of ego is so encrusted, we can't hear the inner guru. That's a very subtle prompting from our nature deep down inside. And so those tools for getting through that layer of ego is number one, discernment, going inside and with the idea that which changes is unreal, that which is unchanging alone is real. So you're trying to find that aspect of yourself within that has never changed, that part of you that is the you that you reference every time you say I. What actually is the essence of it? And it is that part of you that has not changed. So that's discernment. Then dispassion is the letting go of things that are unreal, not pursuing things that are unreal, not looking for satisfaction in things that change, in things that move, because otherwise you're constantly subject to your conditions and circumstance for your happiness, because you can't control all of those and you can't maintain all of those. So you're setting yourself on rocky soil. You're not going to be able to stabilize in that world. And so you have a dispassion, you have a disinterest in things that change and that don't last. And then third is the renunciation. When you just walk away from them, you see that they have no value to a life, to the depth of a heart, to the depth of a life, to an experience of life, to a satisfaction or fulfillment, that the things that change cannot affect any of those things in any meaningful way. And so you renounce, you walk away from them. And the renunciation is necessary because of habit, right? We can discern the truth of things in the external world, and yet we're still in the habit of doing them, and every now and then are kind of almost pushed into them by our mind. And so at some point when you've come to see the lack of value in worldly things, in the things that change, and you've discerned and you've developing a dispassion for them, then you have to finish them off with what Ramakrishna calls one grand renunciation. One grand renunciation is all that's necessary to turn away from the things of change, go for that which does not change, which of course is that divine principle within you, the image of God, the image of the beloved, that Satchit Ananda that is your nature. All right, so now he's talking to a group of householders tonight. And Ramakrishna starts off, a devotee who can call on God while living a householder's life is a hero indeed. Right? So someone who lives a householder life. Householder life means you're going for regular life. You're going to find a partner, raise a family, have a job, serve your community, serve your local temple or church or mosque or whatever it is that you are find inspiring to your spiritual life. that you're going to serve all of those things and work in the world. And he says that if you can call on God, you get bonus points because living a spiritual life in the world is quite a challenge. There's so many things drawing us into the body and into the mind in the workaday world, that to remember God takes quite a bit of effort. And so he's saying a devotee who can call on God while living a householder's life is a hero indeed. So Thakur is really cheering you on in that life. All right, a hero indeed. God thinks, let's see, God thinks, he who has renounced the world for my sake will surely pray to me. He must serve me. Is there anything very remarkable about it? People will cry shame on him if he fails to do so. But he is blessed indeed who prays to me in the midst of his worldly duties. He is trying to find me, overcoming a great obstacle, pushing away, as it were, a huge block of stone weighing a ton. Such a man is a real hero. So you see what he's saying there, because a lot of times, the monks get all the praise and all of the respect and all of the attention. And householder sort of gets second billing, like it's a compromise of some sort. And I'm always trying to push against that, because it's just simply two different paths going to God. And both of us, both paths, I won't take it personal, both paths need each other. Right? The householder needs a monk to kind of hold the point and to show that it's possible and to demonstrate the truth of it in their lives and in their love and in their commitment and in their service. And of course, it's the householders that make monasticism possible. It's the support, the devotion of the householder that feeds mother's children, that mother depends on to take care of everyone through that life. And so Thakur is saying, he's building up this idea of the householder. He's saying, look, you're doing great. Yes, it's a challenge. Don't be down on yourself. You're a hero for even trying. Grace is upon you for even taking the name of God in such an effort. So in a sense, I like to read things like this and go very personal on them and just think that the beloved is proud of you. That not only are you just eking by, not only are you just okay, sort of, barely, to receive mother's grace, but no, mother is in fact proud of you. Mother is in fact amazed at that you're practicing and that you're working and that you're trying and that you're pushing forward and that you've been tenacious through your life up until this point. And so there's a great cheering going on the part of God, on the part of the divine, for you and your success as a householder on your path. A pundit responds, "You're right, sir. The scripture says the same thing. There is in the Mahabharata the story of a pious hunter and the chaste woman. Once a hermit was disturbed in his meditation by a crow. When he cast an angry glance at the bird, it was reduced to ashes. The hermit said to himself, I've destroyed a crow by a mere glance. I must have made great progress in spiritual life." Right? And that's always that's always a very dangerous way to think right there. And we're going to see that it gets him in trouble, because that's the one thing we should always know and always remember in our spiritual life, is that it's never our accomplishment that has brought us where we are. It's the grace of the Lord. And every time that you remember to pray, every time that you remember to chant your mantra, that is your sign of grace. That is Mother inviting you to a very gracious moment, a very gracious activity, to remember God, to remember your divine nature at that moment. All right, so here we have a practitioner, a hermit, who is able to kill a crow with a single glance of displeasure and thinks that because of that, he has become something, that he's got a measurable advancement here, right? The hermit said to himself, I've destroyed a crow just by a mere glance. I must have made great progress in spiritual life. Well, one day he went to a woman's house to beg his food. She was devoted to her husband and served her husband day and night. She provided him with water to wash his feet and even dried them with her hair. When the hermit knocked on her door for alms, she was serving her husband and could not open the door at once. The hermit, in a fit of anger, began to curse her. All right, now see, there's the real measure of spiritual life. Right? Vivekananda gives us those two questions we can ask ourselves. If you really are insistent on wanting to know where you are at in your spiritual life, Vivekananda said there's two questions you can answer, and they will tell you. He said, first of all, are you unselfish? He says, to the degree that you are unselfish, to that degree you have progressed in spiritual life. And the second question is like that, but it's proactive. Not only are you unselfish, but are you proactive, meaning are you loving? Right? And so to the degree that you are a loving person, to that degree you are a spiritual person. So those are the only two ways that we can measure our spiritual growth. So when you find yourself feeling proud of your meditations or of your length of practice or your depth of practice or how many scriptures you know how to chant, all these little things, be careful. You know, those are your crow. those are those things. And so here he's gone to her house and she hasn't answered the door right away, and he's getting indignant, getting angry. So already, you see, he's violating both of the questions that Vivekananda would ask. And so he's overestimated himself. The hermit flew into a fit of anger and began to curse her. The chaste woman answered from the inner apartments, I am not your crow. Wait a few minutes, sir. After finishing my service to my husband, I shall give my attention to you. The hermit was very much surprised to find that this simple woman was aware of his having burned the crow to ashes. He wanted her to give him spiritual instruction. At her bidding, he went to the pious hunter at Benares. The hunter sold meat, but he also served his parents day and night as embodiments of God. The hermit said to himself in utter amazement, why, he is a butcher, a worldly man. How can he give me the knowledge of Brahman? But the hunter was a knower of Brahman and had acquired divine knowledge through his performance of his worldly duties. The hermit was illumined by the instruction of this pious hunter. You see, so there it is right there. Your very service to the world, if you are, you know, the householder is not just going to work and making money and raising a family. There's a way to do it, right? There's a way of doing that. It's your self-control and your spending, and you still are doing your discernment, and you still are doing your dispassion and your renunciations, right? But a lot of times those things are inner renunciations. You know, you can't have a house with no furniture because you've got a family and you've got neighbors to entertain and, you know, people to entertain in your house and take care of. So you renounce internally, you know, you're like, yes, I have a nice apartment or a nice house and I have nice furniture, but all of this will burn up in the end. It is all a changing thing. I should not rely on it nor put much stock in it. You see, so for the householder, your renunciation is internal, like that, and you still allow yourself to collect some friends and some relatives and have a nice family and a car or maybe two. But you draw your line and you hold your discipline as you go. And Ramakrishna says that it's not what you're doing in the world, it's how you're doing it. And so at your job, you're practicing karma yoga. You know, you're trying not to do it with the thought of result too much in mind. That you remember when you go to the office that first of all, you're there as a lover. You know, that your job, regardless of what your job title is, your first job title is a lover of people, right? A celebrator of the divine in each person. So that's our first and foremost job description that carries us to all of our work, all of our jobs. And then secondarily, incidentally, you're an accountant. Incidentally, you're a CEO. Incidentally, you're a waiter. You know, incidentally, you're a barman. Whatever you're doing for a living is incidental. It's how you do it that makes it spiritual practice. If you do it as service, if you do it with love and with attention and offer each thing that you do to God in the moment as a thing, you know, then that is how you practice as a householder. And that's how you go forward in that sense. The master was about to take his leave. He was standing at the door of the next house where Ishan's father-in-law lived. Ishan and other devotees stood by the master. They were waiting to bid him goodbye. Sri Ramakrishna said to Ishan, "Live in the world like an ant. The world contains a mixture of truth and untruth, sugar and sand. Be an ant and take the sugar." Right? So that's the discernment he's talking about. Take the benefits of the world, but leave out the attachments. Don't think anything is necessary. Don't have expectations. Don't form many opinions. These are all good rules for house holders. The fewer opinions you have about things, about the way things should be, the happier you're going to be. Opinions are a danger sign of egoism. So having opinions about everything is not healthy. Have knowledge, but leave your opinions open. Don't attach to outcomes. Don't don't have any expectations of people. Understand, like, one thing my father always told me about, and this saved me many times in my life when I was a householder. He said, never give anyone more money than, never lend somebody more money than you're willing to give to them. So, like, if any of your friends need money or ask if they can borrow, my father always told me, don't loan them anything that you're not willing to give them. Right. And that was always good because it always made me think about, okay, am I willing to give him this much money? And I'd be like, the one time I have in my mind, the guy'd asked for 400 and something dollars. And I said, I have that money, but I'm not willing to loan that to you. I said, I'm willing to loan you 150. I'll loan you $150. And he was grateful. And I loaned him that. And of course, he never paid me back. But it didn't bother me. I didn't carry it around all the time because I remembered I didn't loan him more than I was willing to give him. So we'll just consider this a gift. Then you move on. So don't have expectations out there. Give your love freely, share of your success freely, share your family freely, and give. Serve the divine in everyone, in your neighbors. Make your circle of influence as big as you can. The householder means, you see, the goal in spiritual life is the destruction of ego. And there's two ways to do that. There's to chip it down so it's so small that, it disappears, which is kind of what the monastic path is trying to do, trying to completely eliminate self-will in your life, always do what you're told and be happy where you are, all these things that drive me nuts in my life. But that's the means of the monastic life. In the householder life, it's the opposite. Make your ego is so big that it includes everybody, right? So when you get married, now your ego has to include two people in it. You're no longer just one will and one idea of what you want to do. Now you've got someone to compromise with, someone to be there for, someone to help, someone to put aside your selfishness for. And so you marry your husband or your wife, and then you have a kid, and now you've got a circle of 3, and then you've got a circle of 4, and then you've got a circle of 5. And each time you're now compromising a little bit more for yet another person's will, who has to be considered, whose life has to be taken care of. And you become the provider, the enabler, the support for your family. And so your ego grows as big as your family. And then your ego grows beyond that. You start including the people in your office, and you start considering their happiness and the ways that your life can and support their quest for happiness or quest for fulfillment. You take in your neighbors, right? And you start taking care of your neighbors when they're sick, and you start knowing when their kids are going to college, and you start knowing when their birthdays are. And so little by little, the householder expands and expands and expands and expands and expands until, like Holy Mother teaches, everyone is their own. Everyone is their own child. And so that's the path of the householder, the path of heroes, according to Sri Ramakrishna here. And so in your householder life, be discerning, though, when you make sure that you do control yourself. It's fine for you to make money. It's your duty to make money. And it's your duty to make as much money as you can. But what you do with that money is where your discernment is very important. Buy a reasonable car that's functional and good for what it's going to do. Buy a reasonable house that's good enough for your family and for everybody to be comfortable. Have your vacation that's reasonable for everybody to spend time together and whatnot. But don't be excessive in those things. Your first duty, of course, is to you, yourself, and your family. And then your duty is to your spiritual community. And then your duty is to society at large, right? So you are the caretaker of all of society. And so you use your funds, you use your discernment to make your decisions about how much do I spend on me and mine, and how much do I spend on they and them, the culture at large, the family at large, the spiritual institution that I'm a part of, right? So be an ant. So take the sugar, take the sweet, and leave the bitter, leave the useless things behind. So again, the world is a mixture of milk and water, the bliss of God consciousness and the pleasure of sense enjoyment. Be a swan and drink the milk, leaving the water aside, right? So the sugar and sand, according to Ramakrishna right here, the sugar would be the bliss of God consciousness as we become aware of the presence of God within, which is so important. Oh my God, that is so important. Because this world you're on a raft, a tiny little raft of a body just floating in this world of constant change, conditions flinging every which way. And to try and find any stability in that is very, very difficult without just tuning out, right? And so you really want to find this shrine of the heart that is within you, that place that God left his image or her image within you. It's important to find that image, find the source of love within yourself, and then cultivate that love within, right? So that you always have a place of love to repose to go to take your break from the world, outside world in. That's where you find your comfort. That's where you find your peace and your strength. And you have to develop that yourself. You have to find it first, and then you have to spend time there and cultivate the atmosphere within you so that you become your own temple. Just like the Rig Veda says, your body is the temple of the divine spirit. And so go in, find that divine spirit, and do your worship within, and create that space within you. So that's the sugar, the God consciousness, the bliss of God consciousness. And then the sand, the stuff you want to minimize or get rid of, is the pleasure of sense enjoyment. Right? Just understand that there is no fulfillment to be had by them. That is our discernment. Go out and have that drink and watch what it does to you, and watch the whole process of that, and make your decision about it. Because the things about sense pleasure is that if you start indulging in them without discipline, they all turn into bondage. Because you always have to renew them. None of the pleasure you ever get through the senses lasts more than the experience itself. You always have to go and repeat the experience and get more and more pleasure. And then your tolerance grows as well. So you need more and more of your pleasures to reach the same level of satisfaction that you used to. I read this big article in the National Geographic about coffee. And it was saying what a crazy addiction coffee was, because he says, you have that cup of coffee, and I don't remember the names of the chemicals and stuff, but it does something, it releases something in the brain, and that gives you that energy and that slight lift, that lift in mood that everybody likes in coffee. But they said in this article that after 2 weeks, your body reduces the amount of those chemicals that it makes so that the cup of coffee simply maintains normal now. It doesn't give you that bump. And so now you need 3 cups of coffee to get that little bump, instead of just the 2 cups of coffee before and the 1 cup before that. And so learn from that. This is what we call discernment. This is why it's a very important aspect of our life, is paying attention, because God does not ask you to do anything that isn't clearly for your best. And so if you find yourself having attitudes about all of all the things that God is requiring, then you're not doing your discernment, because discernment brings about, aha, wow, that's why that's why I don't do that. That's why we have to control that. That's why we have to be disciplined, right? And so look for those things that take you to your inner bliss, and avoid those things that drag you into the senses, that drag you into the world. Live in the world like a waterfowl, like a duck, right? The water clings to the bird, but the bird shakes it off. Live in the world like a mudfish. The fish lives in the mud, but its skin is always bright and shiny. Live in, the world is indeed a mixture of truth and make-believe. Discard the make-believe and take the truth. Right? So this is the important part. The make-believe are the stories of egoism, all the stories that you just, you can start anything that involves your past and your future is a story of egoism. It's unreal, right? And what is the truth? The only truth that we know is I am, right? And so the truth has to do with, what does it mean to exist? What are the components of that I am within you, right? We come to find through our inner investigation that there's three components: love, wisdom, and being. And when we become clear on that, well identified with that, then we know that anything that we do, any action or thought that we add our energy to, should come from one of those three spaces: the bliss of existence, the wisdom, the deep wisdom that is our own, or love, right? And if we live a life based on those three unchanging principles of the divine within, our life as a byproduct will be fulfilling, will be beautiful. Sri Ramakrishna got into the carriage and left for Dakshineshwar. All right, we're going to move to chapter 25, Advice to Pandit Shashadhar. And a pundit, if you don't know, it's just a teacher or a expounder of some kind, someone who's educated. It's Monday, June 30th, 1884. Sri Ramakrishna was in his room, sitting on a mat spread on the floor. Pandit Shashadhar and a few devotees were with him on the mat, and the rest sat on the bare floor. Surendra, Baburam, M, Harish, Latu, Hazra, and others were present. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so there was tea there somewhere. Sri Ramakrishna had met Pandit Shashadhar 6 days before in Calcutta, and now the Pandit had come to Dakshineshwar to visit the master. Bhudhar Chattopadhyaya and his elder brother, the Pandit's hosts, were here with him. The Pandit was a follower of the path of Jnana, right? So he's a Jnana yogi. The master was explaining this path to him. He said, Nitya and Leela are the two aspects of one and the same reality. He who is the indivisible Satchit Ananda has assumed different forms for the sake of his Leela, his play. As he described the nature of the ultimate reality, the master every now and then became unconscious in samadhi. While he talked, he was intoxicated with spiritual fervor. He said to the Pandit, My dear sir, Brahman is immutable and immovable, so unchanging and unmovable, like Mount Sumeru. But he who is immovable can also move. Right? So he's talking about this aspect, this two-part aspect of God. There's God and God's power, God's manifestation. So there's the divine, absolute, unchanging absolute. Usually we call that God the Father. And then God the Mother is that which changes, the power of God, the manifestation of God. Ramakrishna makes those different. He's probably going to tell us here in a little bit. It's like milk and its whiteness. You can't think of milk without thinking of its whiteness, and vice versa. Even though they seem like two things, they really are one. Heat, fire, and its power to burn. You can't think of one without the other. They're both required there. And so he's saying God the absolute and God the changing, it's really one and the same, right? And it sounds like that's impossible, but I like to pull out the idea of the movie reel, right? The film. You pull it out, that is the absolute unchanging. When you take that canister, But then when you shine light through one frame at a time and move them through, you get the moving of God. But there's still actually no movement there. It's just an illusion, right? And so it is with the real world. So so Ramakrishna is sitting here talking to him about this indivisible Satchitananda, how you have Shiva and Shakti, but actually the two are one, that they are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. The master was in ecstasy, and he began to sing in his melodious voice. Who is there that can understand what Mother Kali is? Even the 6 darshanas are powerless to reveal her. He went on, is Mother merely a simple woman born as others are born? Only by chanting her holy name does Shiva survive the deadly poison. She it is who creates the worlds, she who preserves and destroys. With a mere wink of her wondrous eyes, she holds the universe in her womb. Seeking a shelter at her feet, the gods themselves feel safe, and Mahadeva, god of gods, lies prostrate underneath her feet. Again he sang, is Mother only Shiva's wife? To her must needs bow down the all-destroying king of death. Naked she roams about the world, slaying her demon foes, or stands erect on Shiva's breast, her feet upon her husband's form. What a strange wife she makes. My mother's play, declares Prasad, shatters all rules and laws. Strive hard for purity, O mind, and understand my mother's ways. And again, I drink no ordinary wine, but the wine of everlasting bliss. As I repeat my mother Kali's name, it so intoxicates my mind that people take me to be drunk. Can everyone have the vision of Shyama? Is Kali's treasure for everyone? Right. Oh, what a pity my foolish mind will not see what is true. Even with all his penances, rarely does Shiva himself behold the mind-bewitching sight of Mother Shyama's crimson feet. To him who meditates on her, the riches of heaven are poor indeed. If Shyama casts her glance on him, he swims in eternal bliss. The prince of yogis, the king of the gods, meditate on her feet in vain, yet worthless Kamalakanta yearns for the mother's blessed feet. It's just so much hidden away in here. You know, even in the Christian scripture, we've got the same division. It's much more pronounced in the Vedanta, you know, the different schools. We've got Shiva and Shakti, you know. We've got the male and female aspects are always lined up with this. The male is the absolute unchanging, and the female is the manifestation, the manifesting power, you know, because of course it's the female body that actually brings in the next generation. And so they kind of just lined it up that way to talk about it. But even in the Christian scripture, in the book of John, the first chapter of that book, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Right? So Word is Shakti. Word is the manifestation. And Father is the divine unchanging in that scenario. And so this Word has come out in its purest form. It's always an incarnation. You know, so in the purest form, Jesus is Word. Shiva is Shiva an incarnation. She's Ramakrishna, Rama and Krishna and Buddha. These are all very pure manifestations of Word, right? And it's that when Jesus talks about himself, when he says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me," the I of the avatar is not a body mind. The I of the avatar is Word, right? It is the purest manifestation of God. That is the I of the avatar, and that is the I that is the only way to God. It is only the only way of reaching that divine is through the whole of in ego, which is what the incarnations are. They are a hole through which God can be seen, which means an absence of egoism, an absence of the veil. And so God, when he has come each time in these different forms, it's always been him, the same person. And I use him only as a convention there. So he's talking about all these wonderful things here, talking about the name, the Divine Mother. You know, is she just a woman chanting the name? No, she is beyond comprehension. We see that she's a demon destroyer, right? So it's word in our lives that helps us slay our demons. And in Kali, whenever you see a picture of Kali, she's got that necklace of heads all around. Those are all the demons that she's slayed, all of your vices that she has slayed, that she has inspired you in your battle against in your life. That is there. She creates the world. She sustains the world. She destroys the world. You see that in everything that is created. It gets sustained, and then everything must be destroyed. Ramakrishna says that which is composed must decompose. Right? Everything has to go back to one without a second before the end. So seeking shelter at her feet, she is our refuge. Ramakrishna says that with that, it's the divine mother, the manifesting power of God. It's that which has to give us permission to go beyond, to enter into the realm of one without a second. So she is the all-destroying king of death. Naked she roams about the world, slaying her demon foes, slaying our vices, slaying our selfishness, slaying our egoism, and stands erect on Shiva's breast, her feet upon her husband's form. What a strange wife she makes, that in an odd way in that story. She was created to come in and create and destroy the demons. But she came in so zealously, she was almost in danger of destroying the whole world. And so Shiva, her husband, runs and throws himself on the ground in front of her so that her foot touches his chest. And of course, in Indian tradition, for the wife's foot to touch the chest of her husband is an absolute showstopper. And so literally Kali is stopped in mid-movement and refrained from destroying everything, from taking everything out in there. But understanding this mother's ways, understanding the ways of spiritual life, understanding our nature, understanding the essence of what we are, understanding the relationship of ourself with our mind and with our body, and all of that. We drink no ordinary wine. It says, that's not just an ordinary thing, but will lead you to the wine of everlasting bliss. This by knowing that you are not the body, and by finally knowing that you are not the mind, that you're not forced into servitude of those two things for everything in your life. When you come to touch that freedom, when you come to touch that little bit of bliss that creeps in from that knowledge alone, then you start to understand the point of this life is to nurture that and to grow that you literally touch a grace that needs no cause. It's a bliss and a joy that is ever present in you. To the person who conquers egoism, this bliss of divine being is always present, always available to us. The master's ecstatic mood gradually relaxed. He stopped singing and sat in silence. After a while, he got up. He sat on the small couch. Pandit Shashadhar was charmed with his singing. Very humbly, he said to Sri Ramakrishna, "Are you going to sing anymore?" A little later, the master began to sing again. High in the heaven of mother's feet, my mind was soaring like a kite, when came a blast of sin's rough wind that drove it swiftly toward the earth. All right, so he's talking about this experience when we go inside and we begin to commune with the divine presence within. The mind does soar; it starts to leave the body and mind, and we go into those deep experiences of peace, that peace that passes understanding. Right, but then what brings us down? The call of the body, the call of the mind, kind of gets in there, begins to nag us. And the egoism that is being enabled by serving the body and serving the mind, the ego that gets created from doing that, that rough wind drives you swiftly down to the ground. It will break that current of bliss and pull you out of your meditation. Then he sings again, once for all this time, I have thoroughly understood. From one who knows it well, I have learned the secret of bhava. Bhava is that supreme love, the love of God for its own sake. A man who has come to me from a country where there is no night, and now I cannot distinguish day from night any longer. Rituals and devotions have all grown profitless for me. My sleep is broken. How can I slumber any more? For now I am wide awake in the sleeplessness of yoga. O Divine Mother, made one with thee in yoga sleep at last, my slumber I have lulled asleep forevermore. I bow my head, says Ram Prasad, before desire and liberation, knowing the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman. I have discarded once for all both righteousness and sin. And so, what is this country where the sun never stops shining? That's our divine isness, right? Our light of awareness, that which lights our thoughts, illumines our dreams, illumines our day, right? This divine awareness, the I am, existence, knowledge, bliss, this self is that which is always shining, even in the depth of sleep. It's still shining, illuminating our dreams, our thoughts, illuminating our quality of sleep for us. And so to dwell in that knowledge of self and not within the mind, which goes through all of its different phases and states of being, but to become to the place where I am wide awake in the sleeplessness of yoga. I'm always aware of myself, content within the self and within that knowledge. And through that knowledge, I have come to know that I need nothing, that I am fulfillment itself. I am love itself. I am wisdom itself. Time is within me. I am not within time. I'm ever free and ever pure. Sri Ramakrishna continued, I have surrendered my soul at the fearless feet of the mother. Am I afraid of death anymore? Unto the tuft of hair on my head is tied the almighty mantra, Mother Kali's name. My body I have sold in the marketplace of the world, and with it I have bought Sri Durga's name. Right? So I've used my body to invest in my spiritual life. I've used my body to meditate. I've used my body for discipline. I've used my body to love, right? To be unselfish, to serve, to worship, to care. So I've used my life and my body for these things. I've bought Sri Durga's name. I've bought that name, which is bringing me to my fulfillment in my practice, singing the names of God. As Ramakrishna sang the line, and with it have bought Sri Durga's name, the tears flowed from Pandit Shashadar's eyes. The master went on with the song. Deep within my heart, I have planted the name of Kali, that wish-fulfilling tree of heaven. When Yama, the king of death, appears, to him I shall open my heart and show it growing there. I have cast out from me my 6 unflagging foes. Ready am I to sail life's sea, crying to Durga, victory. Right? And again he sings, dwell, O mind, within yourself. Enter no other's home. If you but seek there, you will find all you are searching for. Right? So go within and place your awareness on your own awareness, the presence of God within you. And if you can hold your attention there, you will have all that you will ever need. It is the wish-fulfilling tree. If you but seek there, you will find all you are searching for. Though I am never loath to grant salvation, I hesitate indeed to grant pure love, God says. Whoever wins pure love surpasses all. He is adored by men. He triumphs over the 3 worlds. Right? And so God grants salvation freely. He wants everybody free. He wants everybody to know their nature. But this pure love, this divine love, this love that has no cause, this love that has no expectation in it. Ramakrishna says in another place that God is very reserved about who he gives that to, because he says that whoever he gives that to, he becomes a slave to that person, because he cannot resist the love of a devotee, for him. And so God is very conservative in who he grants that level of love for. The Pandit had studied the Vedas and the other scriptures. He loved to discuss philosophy. The master, seated on the couch, cast his benign look on the Pandit and gave him counsel through parables. Master to the Pandit, there are many scriptures like the Vedas, but one cannot realize God without austerity and spiritual discipline. God cannot be found in the 6 systems, the Vedas or the Tantra, right? And so it is not scriptures that tell us what God is, right? And my famous story, saying of Swami Tattwamayananda, that he told me the scriptures are not there to tell you what God is. Nothing can tell you what God is. The scriptures are there to tell you what God is not, so that that which is obvious can become apparent. One of my favorite quotes. The scriptures are not there to tell you what God is, for the scriptures can only tell you what God is not, so that that which is obvious can become apparent for you. So God cannot be found in the scriptures and the practices in religion. All of those things are scaffolding to take us to the place itself, right? They are not the thing itself. But one should learn the contents of the scriptures and then act according to their injunctions. A man lost a letter. He couldn't remember where he had left it. He began to search for it with a lamp. After 2 or 3 people had searched, the letter was found at last. The message in the letter was, please send us 5 seers of sandesh and a piece of wearing cloth. The man read it and then threw the letter away. There was no further need of it. Now all he had to do was to buy the 5 seers of sandesh, the 5 pounds of dessert, and the piece of cloth. Right? So our scriptures are just the to-do list. They are the exercises. They are not the thing itself. Once you've read them and understood them, now it's time to practice them. And the main focus of life is spiritual practice, not just the scriptures. The scriptures are only pointing, but your behavior, your living those scriptures is what leads you to the power within, brings you to the feet of God within yourself. Better than reading is hearing, and better than hearing is seeing. One understands the scriptures better by hearing them from the lips of a guru or of a holy man. Then one doesn't have to think about their non-essential part. Hanuman said, brother, I do not know much about the phase of the moon or the position of the stars. I just contemplate Rama, right? And that really is the essence of spiritual life. Think about God. Think about your highest ideal of love. Let that fill your heart. Let that fill your mind. Let that take up all that empty space inside, right? So that you don't start churning it out, thinking about bodies and minds, but rather are always thinking about the higher aspect. I just contemplate Rama, but seeing is far better than hearing. Then all doubts disappear. It is true that many things are recorded in the scriptures, but all these are useless without the direct realization of God, without devotion to his lotus feet, without purity of heart. The almanac forecasts the rainfall of the year, but not a drop of water will you get by squeezing the almanac. Nope, not even one drop. How long should one reason about the texts of the scriptures? So long as one does not have direct realization of God. How long does the bee buzz about? As long as it is not sitting on a flower. No sooner does it alight on a flower and begin to sip honey than it keeps quiet. But you must remember another thing. One may talk even after the realization of God, but then one talks only of God and of divine bliss. It is like a drunkard's crying victory to the Divine Mother. He can hardly say anything else on account of his drunkenness. You can notice, too, that a bee makes an indistinct humming sound after having sipped the honey from a flower. right? So he's saying all of these traditions of the world, all of these practices, all of these religions, all of these scriptures, they are not the point. It's the life that they inspire you to live. It's the truth that they allow you to discover within yourself. That is the point. That is the point. And that is the love. That is the one most important thing that Jesus, Buddha, Rama, Krishna all talked about. That one most important thing, to love each other as you love yourself, to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? That is the essence of the scriptures. And so use the scriptures to touch that space within you. Study them, but then more importantly, live them. And in the final thing, see them everywhere. Know that they are the world around you. The world is God. And if you know that secret and you see the world that way, then the world and your experience become your own scriptures, written in real time, training you and teaching you and leading you in the company of the beloved. Always. All right. We'll stop there for tonight.